Bill Connolly is the one ESPN personality that I would listen to. I mentioned it on yesterday's show. He put out his famous S&P Plus numbers, the first ones for 2025. Where's Georgia? We'll talk about it next.
You are Locked On Bulldogs, your daily podcast on the Georgia Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Dog Nation? He is Daniel. I am Clint. Together, we are Locked On Bulldogs. It's fantastic. We are better
Even
together.
Separately, we're Locked On Bulldogs, but it's not as good.
Let me tell you this.
The product is not as good.
Together, we might make actually one man.
3/4 of a man.
Three-quarters of a man is how we can create. That's what we bring to the table. You are the listener. We thank you for listening. The first listeners every single day. You guys are fantastic. We love you. Loyal third segment listeners that listen all the way to the end of the third segment. You guys are fantastic. And the 199, that's what y'all are part of. So thank you for the everydayers, the first listeners. We appreciate you guys so much. Daniel teased it in the open. Let's get to it. The S&P. We're not the S&P. We're not doing stocks. This is not all of a sudden a stock.
This is the SP plus.
SP plus, not the S&P. No, the SP plus. Yeah. Numbers for this coming year, 2025. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about where Georgia is and the schedule. Hello. We both tease this separately, but anybody saying there's a major drop-off coming Georgia's way compared to last year doesn't realize the schedule has a large indication of why we thought last year, what we were not very high on. This coming year, things change. See what happens is it flips.
Things have changed.
We're going to talk about that. So, Daniel, let's start SP plus. Connolly comes out and says, "Where is Georgia?"
Yeah, Georgia comes in at number 4 on the initial ratings of the S&P Plus. If you don't know what the S&P Plus is, it's basically the computer nerd, version of. It is a rating system, not a ranking system, but Georgia has the 4th highest rating. It starts with talking about returning production, which we've mentioned. I mentioned on yesterday's show. We talked about Georgia is very low in terms of, very low, bottom of the SEC, one of the bottom teams in the country in terms of returning production, loses a lot. A lot of that obviously has to do with Trevor Etienne being gone, Carson Beck being gone, and virtually all of the productive receivers except one from last year's team being gone. They are the ones that caught the balls, Clint. Like I'm telling you, that's what production.
I'm here to tell you that certain production is not better than other.
Were they efficient in that production? No, they were not, but they did get the majority of the yards.
Not all production is the same, is what I'm trying to say.
That group. So returning production, Georgia is very low. And you may say to yourself, well, they find themselves the 4th highest rating, even though, outside of the top 100 nationally in returning production. Also factored into this is recent recruiting, people that are still on the team. And then he factors in a recent history. How has this team performed in recent years? That would entail things like coaching, schematics, some more of the more difficult to tangibilize aspects of the system. And Bill Connolly
Shakespeare out here, by the way, creating words. I love it.
Who I didn't mean for all of ESPN to catch a bunch of strays in the cold open, but Bill Connolly, as I did mention, is a person whose opinion I respect. I think he puts out great stuff. I think he is typically someone that I enjoy getting insights from him and his computer algorithms. And so we jump into these numbers. Georgia comes out number 4 in the nation. Ohio State, Alabama, Penn State are 1, 2, and 3. It's broken up. Georgia's offensive SP plus rating, Clint, is 7th nationally. It is the 7th highest rating nationally, and their defense is 6th nationally. And their special teams SP plus is 1st nationally, number 1. So I just laid out a lot of numbers for you, a lot of positions that Georgia finds themselves in. What are your overall thoughts on Georgia's position at number 4? Does it seem too optimistic about this year's Georgia team? Does it seem too down on this year's Georgia team, or is it right about where you would have them?
Daniel, as you and I go through position groups and give rankings for position groups,
we're about 2/3 of the way done with that now.
we are. We did defensive line yesterday. We've done offensive line. We've done tight ends. The whole offense we've done. We're very close to the end of it. As we go through those ranking systems of what we give those grades, I'm feeling better and better as I actually look at the depth chart, look at the players on, and look at what we anticipate coming back comparatively even to this last year. This last year, not knowing what we do now, not the beginning of the year, not the hype, not the hope, but actual production. We compare that with what we have. I'm feeling better about this coming year's team than I did last year. And that's not me looking through any rose-colored glasses. That's me looking at the cold hard facts of who we have and how they've either produced or not produced, and what Kirby has done to bring them back. This year's squad, I think fourth is right around where I'd put them. I think that we're semifinalists for college football playoff in play for that this coming year. We're going to have the quarterback play is the biggest question. We get that up and going. I'm feeling really good. And the defense being above the offense, although by just one, I get it. Like 7 and 6, I actually think is a fair assessment of the defense than it is the offense. The offense, Bill has some things in there. I think he's right and good to take into account. I don't know what they are exactly because you and I have lots of questions. The running back room with injury, big question mark. Offensive line, big question mark. We're very high on them, but we don't know. Quarterback, again, we know wide receivers and tight ends. Those are the known.
Even know wide receivers and tight ends. I push back a little bit on that. We know tight ends. We know that group. The wide receivers are talented. They have produced in other places. How will they fit together? How will they be utilized in this offense? I think there are still some legitimate questions to be had even in that group.
Yes.
But I think you're right. It's the quarterback that is the biggest. I would say Georgia's floor.
Yeah.
If Gunnar Stockton is
good,
pretty dang good.
Okay.
Better than good. He doesn't have to be great.
No.
But if he's pretty dang good, I would say number 4 is Georgia's floor this year.
Yeah.
And so I do think that when I look at these ratings, we're projecting a little bit on Gunnar Stockton that I'm not saying it's a reach. No. I'm not saying I don't expect him to be pretty dang good. I'm saying I'm not sure you could definitively convince me that we know he's going to be pretty dang good over a whole season.
It is interesting compared to the other teams on the list. I just want to go comparatively because I actually said, I said on episode, Daniel, and you could tell me I'm right or wrong very quickly. I think Alabama's coming up season is going to be a better team than last year's team. Kalen Moore is heading up. That arrow is pointed up for him, which I didn't anticipate. Actually, truth be told.
No, neither of us did. We both projected, but I agree with you because they've hemorrhaged Jalen Milroe.
Yeah, they have Exodus.
They've offloaded addition by subtraction.
I know. Them being ahead, they have huge questions at the quarterback position. Ohio State, huge questions at the quarterback position. If you look at the teams that are around Georgia, Notre Dame as well, Oregon, Texas, all of these teams that are up there, they're taking to an account.
Texas has no questions at the quarterback position. Arch Manning is the second coming of his uncle Peyton. He's not, there's no question. He's already proven it and every level that he could possibly
I just had a question. I just have a question, Texas fan.
It's unpermissible.
If he was better, why was he the running package quarterback? That's all I'm asking you. I just want to know that answer. You can tell me that answer. I'd love to listen to it. Okay, I digress. I think we're right there. You're right. The floor, Gunnar Stockton, and the questions at quarterback for the rest of the teams is going to be like, and we say Gunnar Stockton as a placeholder because it could be Puglisi, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But my goodness, Daniel, this seems fair to me. This rating system seems fair-ish.
If Gunnar Stockton is who he is who we want him to be.
Give me a name that he has to be like that we've seen in the recent years. Give me a name. Are we talking Jake Fromm? Because Jake Fromm was pretty dang good when all things considered.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake Fromm was pretty dang good. I think if Gunnar Stockton is Jake Fromm, I think 4 is the floor. And that might be, people might disagree with me, but it's because, again, as you and I look through these position groups, I think the floor for some of these groups is really good.
Real good.
And now I think the ceiling for Georgia, if he's pretty dang good, is easily championship caliber team. Like if that offensive and defensive line perform to the level that I think they absolutely can.
Yep.
That's why I said yesterday on the show, I think this is a championship caliber team, and I think there's more potential for improvement there than we have had in recent, probably less stability and less known commodities, but also more potential for some big jumps. So I think 4 is fair for right now. We'll talk about some of the teams around Georgia, talk about the teams that Georgia plays this season, all that more coming up right after these.
But these are, in fact, Roy. Hey, Georgia fans, future of college sports is here and is transparent. Before the Roy app, NIL negotiations often happen under the table. Fans didn't have a clear way to directly support athletes that they love. Now, with Roy, you get to be part of the action of Georgia athletics in the most transparent way possible. Roy, the NIL app, allows you to choose the player you want to support, decide how much to contribute, and receive exclusive content from the athletes that you back. The app is giving fans control, no more uncertainty. Now you can provide transparent, impactful support that helps shape the team and future of Georgia Bulldogs. Download the Roy app from the App Store and start backing Georgia athletes the way you deserve, with transparency, trust, and real impact. This is the future of college sports. Join it now by downloading the Roy app and supporting your favorite players. I think you're right, Daniel. This is fair. Gunnar Stockton, that's the biggest question mark. It is the quarterback position. And a lot of these teams, I've already gone ahead and give you a little hint. A lot of these teams that are around have the same exact questions. ESPN catching strays all day long, but they should, because ESPN saying Georgia has the biggest potential to have a down year compared to last year, which I tried to point out, that was a down year by our expectations. Like, that was the down year.
We did have the down year.
You guys think that was great because you don't have success and great things happening at the schools that you cheer for. We're used to championships back to back. So for us, it was a down year. I said, the other teams that are around Georgia or were high in the playoff rankings that have a chance to tumble down. I listed Texas, Tennessee. Texas comes in at 7 on this list. Tennessee 8. Ole Miss is actually a little surprising to me at 9. But Daniel, I guess I just want to ask the question. There's a couple of teams that my eyes went to immediately. You look at this list. What stood out to you on this ranking? Either they're far too high or they were surprisingly high that maybe backs what you think they should be.
Well, if you look at teams in the top 10 and you look at Georgia's biggest obstacle, we mentioned is quarterback concern. You alluded to this earlier, but let's just explicitly say it. If you look at teams in the top 10 that have a proven known commodity at their school at quarterback, they are Penn State, Tennessee, and LSU. Like, those are the 3 schools in the top 10 of this list that are not experiencing some, oh man, I hope he turns out to be XYZ. Like, all of the rest of these teams are experiencing a little bit of that. Georgia's not an exception to that. And Georgia does have the advantage of seeing Gunnar Stockton in a game and a half last year of experience. Now, that is valuable experience that is going to, I believe, going into this offseason, serve him well. I played a game and a half against 2 of the better defenses in college football last year, Texas and Notre Dame. And that's only going to prove to serve him well, I believe, heading into this season. You add into that the upgrade of weapons around him, particularly at the wide receiver position. But I'm going to argue, Clint, running back depth is a huge concern. But I think our starting running back this year is better than our starting running back last year. I said it in no uncertain terms when we talked about the running backs. And so I think it's an upgrade, at least, injury notwithstanding. I think it's an upgrade in a lot of spots in terms of the talent on the offense. I think that Georgia's got a chance to solidify themselves in an area that, now, a lot of these quarterbacks are going to turn out to be fine or very good or pretty good or whatever, because nobody's out there starting a scrub, right? These are all schools: Alabama, Ohio State, Oregon, Texas. These are all schools that are starting either very highly rated quarterbacks coming out of high school or big time transfers from other programs that have already proven that they are good college football players. And so I don't necessarily anticipate that Georgia's going to have a leg up on a bunch of their competition, but I will say that I think there's no reason to look at this list and go, well, that's the team to fall off. I think anyone doing that is simply looking at Carson Beck to Miami, and they are making all of their decisions based on that. And it may turn out that Carson Beck is a lot better than Gunnar Stockton. Again, just like the argument we made to Texas fans a moment ago. If he wasn't better, why in the world was he playing last year? He was better last year. So I'm not saying that like it wasn't that Carson Beck has no chance of being better than Gunnar Stockton this year.
No.
But I think the idea that Georgia has plummeted off of a quarterback cliff, especially given the way Carson Beck performed last year, which was below everyone's expectation and standards for him, including the coaching staffs, I think is lazy at best. It's a lazy take at best.
It really, really is. And I think the rest of the teams that really stood out to me, especially those that Georgia fans should be concerned with, to me, starts with Alabama. Like, I don't know how to say this in any really polite way to Georgia fans, but I know Alabama is coming to Athens. I get it. It should be an improved environment for us. Alabama has the chance to beat the brakes off of us because that's a dang good team. Like I don't like saying that. I did not anticipate it. I didn't think it was going to happen. But with the quarterback position, either one of those guys is going to be better than Milroe.
In Kalen DeBoer's offense, 1,000%. Shame on Kalen DeBoer for trying to force a square peg into a round hole. Absolutely killed Jalen Milroe's draft stock, in my opinion. Kalen DeBoer did. And so, like, shame on him, but either one of those guys is going to be a heck of a lot better. And
he has his dude as OC coming to out. Like, I know everybody, Grubbs is the classic example for me also of like people not getting how coaching works. Everybody, this is a swipe at the Bobo haters, but I'm going to try to indirectly hit you by talking about Grubbs. Kalen DeBoer brings in Grubbs, a guy who couldn't hack it as an offensive coordinator elsewhere, is not good. Nobody else in the country wanted to hire him. Who else wanted to hire Grubbs? He couldn't do it. Blah, 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 blah. He comes back down to Alabama with Kalen DeBoer because he's in a good situation with a good system. Kalen says, that's the guy I want because it's going to go well with who I have, and it's going to win games for us. And I think they're going to be vastly improved. So Alabama being at the top of this list is number 2 is really concerning. Ohio State, Daniel, like I get they just won. Like, is that recency bias of a national championship? Is that metric being sky high? Because they lose a ton of people.
They do lose a ton of people, but their recruiting has been off the charts, just like Georgia's, just like Alabama's, just like Texas. And I think largely that's why you're seeing all 3 of those schools up on this list. It's not necessarily the returning production is way down, but these are reload schools. Ohio State is just a reload school, and nobody likes to talk about Ryan Day more than you and I did. But the fact of the matter is that Ryan Day did it. He did the same thing that Kirby Smart did. He got over the hump. He won the big one. He brought home the trophy, and with the way that they operate in the transfer portal and the way they operate on the recruiting trail and the system that's in place there, I don't necessarily know. There's not a clear-cut number 1 in college football for me, but I don't have any problem whatsoever with Ohio State being one of the teams in consideration there.
Okay. Is it just me? How is Notre Dame 5? I'm missing something there.
You're saying they're too high?
They're too high. They're too high. I'd put them in the top 10. Ooh.
I think I could make the argument they're too low.
See,
But
I'm missing something. I knew as I looked at that because they're losing. They got Jeremiah Love, who I told you I would rather, if I need a running back, I would rather take him in the draft than anybody else. I love his game, like truly and honestly, he is
absolutely,
it for me. I guess they
yeah,
always have trenches. They always have guys on defense. They're always bullies up front, and that is true. It just come back to the quarterback position. And Freeman, I love Freeman. They make no bones about this.
yeah.
Love that dude. So.
But I'll be honest, right? Didn't they underperform at the quarterback position last year? And
Yeah.
where'd they end up? Like how they do? Like that's
Right.
I think the system that's in place there is it's an old school formula that appears to be working for Marcus Freeman right now. So we will see. We're going to talk about Georgia's opponents on this list. This just in, there's a lot of them that are ranked really highly. Stop me if you've heard this before, but first we'll talk about these.
And these are, in fact, Fabric. Life moves fast, especially when you have family. One day you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing their future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You can be covered in under 10 minutes. In many cases, no health exam is required. As a parent, I want to make sure my family is financially protected no matter what happens. Fabric gives us the peace of mind. It's affordable and it's beyond life insurance. Fabric also offers free digital wills to access the investments accounts to help you plan for your children's future. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. There are a lot of these teams that are on Georgia's schedule of 2025 that are up here at the top of the list. Daniel, let's get to some of them. I already talked about Alabama. I anticipate a lot of good things. Alabama's going to be in the playoff. I actually think they get a bye. I think I look at their schedule. I look at their team. Look at that going. I don't like admitting that. But man, they're going to be right up there again. We've already talked about them. Quarterback position notwithstanding, they bring back a lot of good guys on defense. That by mass exodus before, last year should have been their worst down year, guys, because they had a mass exodus.
This just in, they did not make the college football playoff.
And so that's a down year. I understand. They played pretty dang good, all things considered, with that mass exodus and with Kalen Bort forcing, like you said, a stupid decision at the quarterback position with his offense. He should have changed the offense or changed the quarterback. One of those two things should have happened. He did not, but they bring back a lot of guys. Who else on this list, Daniel, that we're looking at, do you think is rightly worrisome because of how they're ranked?
Well, Georgia plays 4 teams in the top 10 on this list. Alabama, Texas, Tennessee, and Ole Miss, all in the top 10. They play 6 teams in the top 25. That's half of the regular season schedule is ranked 23rd or higher on this list. Florida coming in at 17.
Oh boy.
And Auburn coming in at 23. Now, both of those schools are schools that heading into the year last year, Georgia wasn't really thinking too much about. They, perceived big time down years for both Florida and Auburn. And Georgia did handle their business fairly simply against both of those teams. But with DJ Lagway coming back, with all of the, recruiting that Hugh Freeze has been able to do at Auburn, the roster turnover, both of those teams appear to be formidable opponents this year. So yes, Clemson does fall off the schedule.
Sure.
But with those two teams seemingly on the rise, you could make the argument that in terms of opponents that Georgia faces, this is a more difficult schedule than last year's. Now, not in terms of where they play the games. That is the interesting thing to me, because this is a rating system and this is not a perfect science and not a ranking system. You can extrapolate out from this when you look at the actual numbers to see who would win, who would be favored in each of these games. And there's only one game on Georgia's schedule based on these SP plus numbers in which Georgia would not be favored. And it is not the Alabama game, who Georgia is 2 spots below. But because that game's in Athens, the numbers would mean that Georgia would be a slight favorite.
Maybe a 1 point.
Yeah. The only game in which Georgia would be an underdog this year would be on the road in Knoxville at Tennessee. Favorites over Alabama, Texas, Ole Miss.
Yep.
But those were the 3 big games on last year's schedule. But and now Georgia fans are like, well, we get all 3 of those games at home.
Sure.
Those aren't the 3 biggest games on Georgia's schedule this year. The 3 biggest games on Georgia's schedule this year, based on quality of opponent.
I have to prepare myself for one of the, because the bucket needs to be worthy. It's my bucket. This is my bucket. I choose when to use it.
The 3 biggest games on Georgia's schedule in terms of quality opponent are undoubtedly, in my mind, Alabama, Texas, and Tennessee. Now, Ole Miss is only ranked rated 1 spot lower than Tennessee on this list. I have a lot more questions about Ole Miss than I do about Tennessee, and that game is in Athens. I think if you're a Georgia fan, you're going into this season thinking we need to be 10-2 so we can make the college football playoff. This is the goal every year. This is the goal.
Correct.
10-2 gives you a good chance to compete for an SEC championship like it did last year and make the college football playoff like you did last year. If you're going to go 10-2, you're thinking about that Tennessee game first on the road, and then you're thinking about we can only drop 1 of these home games. And by the way,
hold on, keep going, Daniel. This is
Florida is a neutral site game,
and
Georgia Tech is in the top 50.
Guys,
like there's a very listen. It's going to start getting to the point where you guys are going to start making fun of us about Georgia Tech and like how afraid of Brent Key we are. We're not afraid of Brent Key.
No, I respect the hell out of him though.
But Georgia Tech is not a cakewalk road game.
Nope.
And Auburn is certainly not a cakewalk of a game. Like
that's my bucket. Daniel, I get it. I know. It's Hugh, it's Auburn. They're laughable. It hasn't been a rivalry in many, many years. I get it. But I'm also here to tell you, this is Auburn's ecosystem. This is who they are and will always be. They're not going to be perennial, hopeful, championship contending people. That's not their game. Their game is snake biting somebody that they hate. That's their game. They're playing the spoiler. They're the hateful people. And you're telling me Jordan Hare Stadium, Daniel? Like, I make fun of me. I understand. But Tennessee, Auburn, Alabama, it is not simple to think. 10-2, lock it up. There's a lot
to go 10-2 to this point. To go 10-2, you may have to go undefeated at home, and you play Alabama and Texas at home.
Oh no,
that's not a. Come on now. I know we beat Texas twice last year. I get it, but that's not a situation you want to find yourselves in. It is Georgia's schedule. For those saying that Georgia's schedule has gotten leaps and bounds easier this year, I just simply do not see it. I do not see that as being real, and I think this list justifies that position quite a bit. Come back tomorrow. We're going to be back talking about another defensive position group, talking about how we rank them and what kind of grades we're going to give them. And we'll see you guys then on Locked On Bulldogs podcast.
See ya.